All right, Chapter 7, Section 2. This is General Form, Apprentice level. General Form is just another way of expressing the equation of a line. We've already worked with one form called the Slope-Intercept Form. So recall that that's y equals mx plus b. Okay, and when it's in this form, m is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Okay, and of course it is located at x equals 0, y equals b. So that's the point that you would plot. All right, so let's see what an equation written in general form looks like. And we're going to start with an equation that is actually already expressed in slope-intercept form. All right, so here we go. Okay, so now I would argue that general form is not really that practical, but the nice thing is that when you write something in general form, there are no fractions. Okay, so in this equation, in slope-intercept form, we have a fraction to get rid of. It says negative 1/2. Well, remember, the denominator just means you're dividing by that number, right? 1 over 2 just means 1 divided by 2. Exactly the same thing. So the only way to undo dividing by 2 is to do its opposite, or its inverse, I should say, which is to multiply. So I'm going to multiply the entire right-hand side by 2. But that means I must multiply the left side by 2. All right? So let's see what happens. Well, 2 times y just stays as 2 times y. Okay. Now, hopefully you recall, okay, that when you have more than one term inside a set of brackets and you're multiplying it by one item out in front, perhaps you've seen these before. This is called distributive law, and it just means that the 2 is multiplying both of these terms here one at a time. All right. So what is 2 times negative 1/2 x? Well, let's just break it down. First of all, we know a positive times a negative is negative. So I know my sign is negative already. Now let's just deal with the numbers. 2 times 1 divided by 2. Well, the 2's just cancel. I'm just left with 1. And the x is still there. Okay. And 2 times positive 3 is positive 6. So there we go. So the fraction is now done. All right. So this is not in general form yet, but most of the work is done. To complete it, what we do is we take everything that we see and we collect all the terms on one side of the equation, typically the left, but it actually doesn't matter, so that there's actually nothing left on the remaining side. Okay, so we have 2y on the left already, so we're going to leave him there. Okay, we have negative 1x, or negative x, so I'm going to add x to both sides, like that, which means I have to add x here. And I'm also going to get rid of this positive 6, so the only way to do that is to subtract it from both sides. And there we go. So what happens is everything on the right disappears. So the only thing we can write is 0. Okay. So now on the left, we have 2y plus x minus 6 equals 0. Now, we're just going to change the order so that the x is written first, the y term is written second, and then just the plain number is written third. So this becomes x plus 2y minus 6 is equal to 0. This is now general form. Okay, so this equation and the original equation, they're exactly the same. They graph the same picture, everything's the same, but there are no fractions, and everything is written on one side. Also, I didn't have to worry about it in this case, the number, which is an invisible 1, that's multiplying the x, that must be positive. But it already is positive, so we're good to go. All right, so this is called general form. Say it's a bit more theoretical. It's not as practical in terms of getting a graph in, but so this is the form. So we have some number a times x plus some number b times y plus some number c equals 0. If an equation is written like this, we say it's in general form. Just a note, though this says b, note that it is capitalized. It is not the same b as the little b that we saw before. Okay, it's completely different. All right, but that's not enough. There are some conditions. In fact, there are 3, okay, that these 3 values, a, b, and c, must satisfy. So a, b, and c, okay, they are integers. So positive or negative whole numbers. Okay, so in other words, no fractions. So you can't have any fractions whatsoever. Okay. All terms expressed on one side. Okay, typically we express them on the left, but it would be correct to say 0 equals ax plus by plus c. That would be fine. So everything set equal to 0. Okay, so that's the second condition. The third one, it's quite minor, and I don't know why this is in there, but it is. A, okay, that's the coefficient. That's the number multiplying the x. That should be positive. So if it's negative, well, you'll see how to deal with that in a minute. All right. So here it says, state why each of the following linear relations is not expressed in general form. Okay. So it doesn't ask us to fix it. Okay. We just want to find out what's wrong with it. Right. So, and we look at the first one. Notice how there are no fractions present. Okay. But the problem is we have terms spread between both sides of the equation. Remember, in general form you have to have everything on one side. Okay, so most likely this 7y, we would subtract it from both sides. We don't have to do that, so I'm just going to give the reason. Everything not equal to 0. Okay. The next one. This one is most likely to fool people, right? Because there are no fractions. Everything is written on one side. The only problem with it, and it's so minor, but this number right here. Okay. The number multiplying x, it needs to be positive. So technically speaking, this is not quite general form. Okay, so the x coefficient, so the coefficient is the number in front. Whoop. Okay, the x coefficient is negative. Okay. Now, this is the only one I'm actually going to show you how to fix. Okay, you don't have to do this, but if you run into this situation, I don't know why that's not. Why are you not erasing? There we go. If you run into this situation where everything is good except this is negative, well, what you can do is just multiply both sides, everything by -1. What that does is in effect it reverses the sign of everything. Okay, so if you multiply these 3 terms, and technically you should multiply the right-hand side too, though because it's 0 it doesn't make a difference. We need to change this to positive 4x. This would change to positive 9y. This would change to negative 50. That happens if we multiply everything by -1 equals. Now I am multiplying the 0 by -1 as well, but that's still 0. Okay, so now this is in general form. All right, the last one, I think this is the one, perhaps is the most obvious. Okay, this number here, it's positive, everything is set equal to 0, but we've got a fraction. Okay, we can't have any fractions present. All right, so there is a fraction, and in general form, that's a no-no.